We speed up maintenance orders, we speed up inspections. Problem, the resident's really bad at explaining the problem. So we tend to skip the triage step and go right to dispatch. Well, that is the most valuable step in the whole process. If you don't know what you're solving, you're just spending money really inefficiently.
Today, we are talking with someone who's rewriting the playbook on maintenance and service experience across real estate. Guillermo Salazar, he believes that success comes from building bridges and not moats, connecting people, not protecting silos.
If I could reduce 50% of my people's workload, they're probably going to be happier and they're getting more of the job done. Everyone, well, they didn't invent this. We did not invent this. This was stolen from medicine, insurance, asset management, military, and brought it over into property management. I'm all about automation. I think automation is the most important thing. We save a ton of money. So how we do it, we allow the maintenance coordinators or the technicians to see the problem instantly in seconds. Triage, diagnose, figure if a part's required, and maybe try to solve the problem, all in like 30 seconds.
Well, hello and welcome back to Inside the Vendor Network. Today on Inside the Vendor Network, we are talking with someone who's rewriting the playbook on maintenance and service experience across real estate, PropTech, and beyond. Guillermo Salazar is the founder and CEO of IrisCX, a visual customer experience platform that uses guided video, embedded AI, and smart triage to simplify everything from product setup to property maintenance. And in short, he's helping teams know more before they go. So today I have the pleasure of introducing to you one of my guests here, who really makes Guillermo stand out is his mindset, is what I've learned. And as the host of the podcast, Getting the Hell Yes, where I've had the pleasure of being a guest, and a board member of the U.S. PropTech Council, he believes that success comes from building bridges and not moats, connecting people, not protecting silos. So today we're going to dive in on how empathy, data, and design thinking are all coming together to transform the way residents, vendors, and operators communicate. So welcome to the show, Guillermo. I am so proud to finally be able to host you, my friend.
Oh my gosh, what an introduction. I've got to write a bio for somebody else. If you could maybe do that for me. You send that over, that clip. That's fantastic. Absolutely. I love what you guys are doing. This industry feels like it's just coming out of its teenage years, and everyone is like all of a sudden like, where did this all of a sudden come from? And maybe I don't like it. Maybe I do love it. But you know, what you're doing in terms of like raising awareness and I don't say advocacy, but building a social movement around it, connecting everybody is again, part of the whole mantra of build bridges, not moats, is that we're so much more resilient as a collection of people that are together rather than individuals with individual agendas. And I'm thrilled to be a part of this show and thrilled to be having a conversation with you today. Every single conversation I have with you has been like a cup filler. So I'm ready to rock.
Well, good. I agree with you. And I think, essentially we all do have a personal agenda, and mine really is coming from the vendor side, and the background is really filling the gaps in between all the amazing shows that we get to participate in, right? We go to all these conferences, but like, we don't have a platform out there that's like, hey, I want to learn more about tech. So hopefully this YouTube channel is going to turn into essentially a directory of categories of service providers and have a library of service providers that I can dive into as if I'm walking through a trade show floor, and I can go booth to booth to booth. But now we're just going to go from podcast to podcast to podcast, right? So,
right. Well, and I think there's a chance to, gives a chance to people can listen to this at 2x speed. They can listen to it when they're out for a walk. They can get to know who they're buying from because we are establishing partnerships, right? And the conference booth setup is just, it isn't very conducive to building that kind of relationship because you're just on show. And
it's like a bag and they fill it about lids and all their tchotchkes and giveaways. You know what we're going to do here? We're going to give away like real inside info. and we're giving away relationships, right? Like, yeah, when I first met you and I was able to come on your podcast, it was right shortly after I was like, hey, I, I'm not going to buy your platform, but man, I need to be able to talk about it in rooms you're not in. And I want to be able to share information about your company and about who you are. And ever since, I mean, we've continued to grow our relationship, get to know each other, and I've learned a lot about your platform to the point where that I can say, "Hey, you really need to take a look at his system. I haven't seen anything like it. I'm not in the space. I'm not in the market for buying it, but boy, it seems unique, and I know enough about tech to see something unique." And so I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that today. But let's back up and let's build some credibility because I think that's important.
Yeah.
Um, talk a little bit about your incredible career, right? So you got some big brands here. You got Deloitte. Um, I have this category of people. Andy Wu is a past guest. I call him a smarty pants. And as I've gotten to get to know you, it's like you're kind of a smarty pants too. Like,
Well, that's generous. That's very generous, especially compared to Andy. That's very kind. I mean, I started my career in doing systems implementations. So I did that for 25 years and started with PwC, worked with PwC for 5 years. And then I left PwC, started my own company, Quattro, or actually, did independent work for a while there and then started Quattro. And Quattro, we grew that really quickly over about 4 years. And then we sold that to Deloitte. And then I was at Deloitte for roughly 4 years. And then exited Deloitte and kind of like did some freelancing bit for a bit. Started up Celesto. Still, and keep in mind, all in this space, we were doing consulting around maintenance procurement for field assets, for asset businesses. So my first job was like, field drilling services and procurement maintenance all around that. Then I went into transportation. Then I went into energy, like upstream energy, then downstream energy, and then utilities, and then agriculture, then retail, manufacturing, more rail. And so just like it kept going around all these asset industries and all in maintenance and procurement, and then ultimately capital projects. So the three things that
and the audience, keywords he just said right there, right? He's got experience in managing assets across a variety of things. So transferable skills are very, very important. And I had that light bulb moment in Dallas when I introduced you to an owner operator and you told this story. I learned this about you. And I think that we want to talk about I want you to share that with the audience more today because I had a light bulb moment. I was like, oh yeah, these homes are just more assets.
yeah.
And the assets that you have experience with, pretty valuable assets,
Well,
such as
and the parts that are really similar, right? And I mean, I'll speak generically about my experience, right?
okay.
So you've got assets that generate revenue. Those assets are unproductive. They create cost. Those assets are distributed all over the place. The people that run those assets, the experts, they're also distributed all over the place and not available to serve those assets in kind of like 24/7, right? Because they work independent of where they are. So what I mean is that you've got distributed assets, you've got distributed experts, right? And then in the mix, you've got distributed problems. So assets everywhere, problems everywhere, and people everywhere. And if those assets are down, they cost you money. And when they're up, they create revenue. How does that sound different than the business that we're in?
I mean, I think you nailed it.
It doesn't sound, and we build lots of assets, right? We build assets over and over again, all in new territories, right? New areas, new regions, new urban areas. You got to deal with laws, deal with compliance, have to deal with safety, have to deal with OSHA, have to deal with all these different things, right? You have to deal with massive turn projects, have to deal with small turn projects, make readies, makeovers, got to manage inventory, got to manage moving trucks, got to manage moving people, have 1099s, have W-2s, like all of that. That's the ecosystem that I worked in for 20, 25 years. And we put in what I hope to bring to this industry is that we put in systems to solve those problems in those industries. And what I hope everyone hears loud and clear is that the problems that I just described have existed in other industries for a quarter century. So we're not suffering what feels like new is not new. It's been done. It's been worked on. There's been attempts to solve it. There's been successful solutions, all those different things all over the place. And so this is a newer industry with very old problems.
Because we're in the early innings.
We're in the early innings, and we're figuring it out how to port it over. And I hope that, like, when I talk to folks, like, especially folks in the military, right? And this, I was sharing the story before on another show, is that, like, we had troubles trying to figure out how to solve problems for our distributed assets, our distributed people, and our distributed problems. And so we leaned on military people that came and showed us how to solve problems because they've been doing it for 100 years, right? Like, if I'm having a hard time setting up a facility or an asset in a remote region, and we're struggling over logistics for procurement and for services, for parts and services, basically. And, we're hearing all these reasons why it's not going to work. Here's why it's not going to work. Here's why it's not going to work. And all of a sudden you bring over a guy who set up airfields in Afghanistan, and he's like, whoa. This is a luxury compared to what we had to deal with.
We've already done this.
We've already done this, right? Here's the playbook. Here's the parts you got to look out for, right? Here's the things you got to understand. Here's what you got to track. And at that point in time, you start realizing, oh, okay, so what? It's not 100% match. Nothing is 100% match. Company to company, from like BTR1 to BTR2, SFR1 to SFR2, there's about 80% of the same thing. 100% is different.
It's standard age rules.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. I just, every single time I try and find a difference, I find a similarity. And so we did the same thing across industry for, like I said, quarter century. And the work that we were doing, we were always taking across templates and footprints and how we did the work, and then essentially figuring out how we can optimize it. And you start with 80%, and then the rest of it, you listen, you learn, you understand, and you set it up to work with that business unit, that company. And even I would go even far as that even within the same company, we had a blueprint and footprint model where you blueprint out the solution, you'd establish a footprint, and then you do what we call the fit gap. And I still have these words just tattooed into my brain. I can't stop using it. But fit gap meaning where are the fits, where are the gaps? And then we deal with the exceptions. And that approach systematizes how you do things. And then when you talk about maintenance and procurement, because you've got partners in that conversation, especially in our business, but in every asset, there is not an asset business in the world that doesn't have partners involved. Every single one does. Very few are end to end.
So let's go inside IrisCX. So in what sentence, tell the audience, how would you describe what you do?
Sure. So we'll start with the problem.
Let's talk about today in one sentence. What does your software, your system do without even exposing the benefit? What's it do?
Well, we speed up maintenance orders. We speed up inspections. That's what we do. And how we do that is, or I'll say better yet, the options that are out there often rely on vague data that's put in by a resident. And then we go and we run that through an AI engine and try to make it go faster. Problem is the resident's really bad at explaining the problem. And so we tend to skip the triage step and go right to dispatch. So if you've got like in the 3-step system where you go like problem, triage, dispatch, solve, okay, call it 4 steps, close, maybe 5, or I guess the 4. We're skipping triage because problem, we skip triage, we go to dispatch, and then we go to solve. Well, that is the most valuable step in the whole process. If you don't know what you're solving, you're just spending money and really inefficiently, right? Because the challenge is that you're going to a site that says leaking kitchen, leaking living room, or just living room. And you don't know if it's the AC, if it's the whatever. And so we don't architect or engineer for...
We don't know if it's new. We don't know if it's old. We don't know
the warrant. And in BTR, we don't know if it's warrantable or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so in all those cases, we've gone way too, I would say that like I would love to say, and again, I'm all about automation. I think automation is the most important thing we think about when we think about these things. But if you're automating bad data, you're just making the people do the work, do more work. So you got to pause and take a second to create or capture the right data. And if you can, solve the problem upstream. And there's a million fables in the planet and the world and all of our history, stitch in time, whatever you want to call it. Like, where if we do stuff upfront, we save penny wise, pound short. Like, we save a ton of money downstream. And why this is important in our industry right now.
Well, hang on, let's back up.
Yeah, sure. So does that help? We do that. So the beginning. Yeah. So how we do it? I didn't share how we do it. I hopefully get there. So we allow the maintenance coordinators or the technicians to see the problem instantly with no app, no login, in seconds. Triage, diagnose, figure out if a part's required, and maybe try to solve the problem. All in like 30 seconds, 2 seconds.
All right, so let's walk through real time.
Yeah.
I'm a resident.
Yeah.
I'm having an issue in my home, right? I don't know. It's fall now. I haven't clicked on my heat because I'm cheap and I'm gonna put on sweaters until I can't, and I just gotta break down, turn the heat off. But I go over to the thermostat and I click on the heat, no heat.
Right.
That's about to occur in this industry.
Yep.
And there are going to be, I don't even know because I don't have the data, a lot of calls that come in across the entire rental industry around my heat didn't turn on. This is going to be real life.
Well, you
and a percentage. Hang on. I love building up pain. I'm a salesperson, so I got to create the pain, right, in this story. And then what they're going to do, what I just heard you say, is they're just going to skip triage and go straight to dispatch. And when that happens, that's going to cost a lot of time, a lot of money that could have been completely avoided. And your system is going to solve a percentage of that. Because some of them are going to be legit, but some could have been solved with your software without ever dispatching anybody.
Well, a great example of that no heat scenario, right?
Okay.
Stuff. Pilot light, right? Maybe the battery's dead. Maybe the electrical pilot light battery's done that. Maybe the pilot light's gone out. Do you need coaching? I'll be lighting that. Maybe the filter is dirty because it hasn't run for a while, or the fan's been running for a while. Maybe there's a period of time where you turn the AC off, but you run the fan in your furnace, and your furnace is, if you got forced air, and that first forced air furnace is, that filter's all clogged up. And so if you go and fire up your thermostat, then that's going to not be able to suck in air. And then what's going to happen is your furnace is going to high temp out. So it's going to temp out because it's not getting enough air in to keep it cool, or to flow through, because it can't inhale and take it through the dirty filter. And that situation there, literally, take a look at the filter's dirty, let the furnace run for a minute and a half. Okay, well, you need a new filter. That's the problem. In that situation, you need a couple of things. You can't just run the furnace without a filter for like...
Okay, if the audience is listening, we're going to tag our first episode with Evan Howard, Second Nature. Get with Second Nature because they got filter easy. We could eliminate filters, how being an issue, but there's still other issues.
There's other issues, right? I mean, there's garbage disposals, there's no AC, there's kitchen leaks, it just never stops. There's 10 issues that we see all the time. And those same issues, no AC is number 1. Number 2 is plumbing related. Number 3 is no heat. Number 4 is toilet related. Number 5 is kitchen related. Number 6 is appliances. 7's, I can't remember 7. I can only remember 6 things. But you get into these top 10 issues.
Well, that'd be something with a toilet.
Toilet flapper stuck, right? Toilet flapper stuck, toilet's running, right? I'm going to replace my flapper, or maybe the ball valve needs bending. Maybe there's a leak in the water. All that's running.
It's just running and running, driving up my water bill.
Yep. Well, and it's running, and you don't know the problem. So in the toilet example, so what we do, like we say to people, hey, look, you may not believe that you can resolve all these problems remotely. If you ask your techs, if you actually log root cause, you would know. I know we've had chatted with people, maintenance companies that have looked at their stack of work orders, and their first glance, they've never looked at it and said, what kind of triage remotely? They said, we're at 42%. We could have done this remotely, right? And that's their first glance. And we're
always a powerful statement. Say that again.
Well, we asked them that if you could have seen the problem, how much of this could you solve remotely? And they go 42%. We looked at 100 work orders, 42%.
2%
Right.
of tickets solved remotely from a vendor lens, because we're inside the vendor network. From a vendor lens, if I could cut down 42% of dispatch to go assess and just dispatch my past was in flooring.
Mm-hmm.
So 9 out of 10 times, we didn't get good information as a vendor coming in from a portal.
Yep.
We didn't even get good information from a super if it was unoccupied. But if it was occupied, chances are we were getting horrible information.
Right.
And so our go-to was, we'll schedule to come look at it.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go in multiple times. That's gas, employee time, scheduling it, time with one of my scheduling coordinators. There's a lot that goes in to just get that first assessment scheduled. Now, if I could have wiped out 42% of that as a vendor operator, my cost that I charge for all services could drive down
100%.
as well.
And here's
My average would go down.
the very fast math, right? And you think of things in terms of trips. This is the thing that we looked at, like, again, like any logistics company is going to talk to you about trips and travel time, right? And these companies, and especially in SFR BTR, it's very much looks and feels like a logistics company. Right. And it's all about trips and reducing back and forth. That's logistics. That's moving things around. The business of moving things around, whether it be people or be parts. And so, like, when you take a look at the average in field services is around 1.7 trips for a work order. So the math is, you get 100 work orders, that equals 170 trips.
Yep.
Okay.
Now I just got my calculator.
Yeah, good. Got that one. I was just adding a zero. If you solve 30% of those trips, those work orders remotely, now you've got 70 work orders. The other thing you have is you also know all the parts. You also know what needs to be done. You also know maybe you've gotten approval on your repair replace. Maybe you're over NTE and you got that figured out. Maybe you bundled up now in a couple other trips together to solve it once. And now you go from 1.7 trips to 1.1 trips. So now you've only got 70 work orders and I've got 80 trips. So I'm going from 170 trips to 80 trips. Now, hopefully that's interesting to people. Where it becomes really powerful is you think about your available capacity to solve these problems. There's not enough technicians in the world, right? And if you're asking them and you're designing for 170 trips, you're consuming 170 resources. 170 45-minute blocks of 45 minutes, 175 blocks of 1 hour. You're consuming 100 hours, 170 hours of those people. Let's assume an hour. Well, if you could consume just 80 of them, well, now you can get more done with those people. You can move faster. So that the concept of eliminating work orders upstream is a systematic approach that is used in every industry that manages assets.
100%.
There's no industry that the best practice is no work order. That's our goal, rather than faster work orders. And the goal should be to try and minimize and mitigate as much as possible upstream, get all the data upstream, get your approvals in place so that we close it faster. That's great for the provider, so that we minimize in diagnostic fees. Now, that can be a contentious conversation depending on what point of view you have. And so that we do not disrupt the resident with all these trips.
How do you put a price on resident experience?
Well,
right?
Let's imagine that you have 2 weeks of holidays a year, right? So you have 10 days off of holiday. And if I'm asking you to take off half a day, I've just asked for 5% of your vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So think about that.
No bueno.
I've got to take a vacation day to stay home because I'm waiting for the furnace guy to show up or the toilet guy to show up. And then when they show up and say, I don't have any parts, do you mind taking off another vacation day?
So when it's not in-house maintenance and in flooring, a lot of times you're dispatching to a vendor, I can tell you that we had been giving work orders where we dispatched our guy to go assess, or girl, to assess, and we get out there and the house could have an inch of water and it'd be like, yes, it's going to need new floors.
Yeah.
But first, we're going to need to get this dried out and pull this out. So assessing properly and fast can help minimize other damage done to the home.
Yeah.
So now the problem doesn't just start with, hey, I got a leak and I need some new flooring. Oh no, I had a leak and now it wasn't addressed fast enough. So now it's sheetrock, baseboard,
Well,
subfloor.
especially in on call. Like I feel for all these folks in the field, they're first responders. On call is most of the week.
Yes.
40 hours is only like there's 220 change hours in the week. Like 40 hours is a small amount of that work week. The rest of it's all open for on call. So they can call for on call evenings and weekends. They're plus they're working the full 40. Now they get paid for that. Okay. But they're relatively not compensated for how much they're actually doing the work, how much that disrupts their life. And so like,
let's mention job joy, right? This is important because what's the cost of turnover if your employee doesn't have job joy or having pride in what they do because they're frustrated with a system that's broke and they know they're driving around in between saying, we could be doing this better. We could be doing this smarter. I shouldn't have had to drive over here. We could have triaged this on the front end.
Literally, if you ask a tech and what's the first thing they say when they're talking to a resident is, I need to get eyes on the problem. They use those words precisely, right? Then your flooring example, when they get to site and they realize they've got to call the restoration crew, that's just waste. That was pure waste.
Pure waste.
And I think it's something for people to understand. Like, not only is it waste in terms of a scarce resource like people's time, you that's billable, non-billable. Who knows if that's billable or not? Or maybe it's something you bill for but then write off. Now you're somewhat like in an on-call context. It's not only the person's time; it's that person's family's time, right? Like, it's their spouse's time, it's their kids' time, and now they're running off to go do other things. Like, and they got to leave. Oh, it's not normal to manage it that way. Mm-hmm. And so, like, one of the things that we look for is that when I take a look at that 170 trips to 80 trips kind of like conversion rate, right? You're looking at almost 50% less work. So let's just think about it in terms of work. If I could reduce 50% of my scarce resources workload, they're probably going to be happier.
100% they are. I know I would be.
And theoretically, they're getting more of the job done. So you could concede
outcome than
some. Right. And so this is an opportunity where, and I think that I hope everyone hears loud and clear. They're saying, well, they didn't invent this. We did not invent this.
Right.
Stole this. Right.
Yes.
This was stolen from medicine. This was stolen from insurance. This was stolen from asset management. This was stolen from military, right? I just talked to somebody who was doing this in submarines like 7 years ago. So, like, here's the thing. We didn't invent this. And one more thing. In medicine, you had distributed customers. You had scarce resources in terms of experts. And you had problems that need to be solved fast. In insurance, you've got distributed problems. You've got distributed/centralized experts. And problems got to be solved real fast. Same story in military. This is not an invention. All we did was take 80% of what was solved somewhere else, brought it over into property management, and revealed what's possible.
Voila.
Right? So I hope people, like, I'm not claiming to have invented this. We're not claiming to have invented this. We stole it from somewhere else, brought it to an industry and customized it to work for property management. And things that we made that were different are specific to property management. But keep in mind, we also have customers that are product companies. We have customers that are utilities, and they do inspections, and they do in-house product support. They do in-house appliance support, and those things are all part of what you do when you're doing supporting a property. So it's the again, every time I listen to somebody talk about some of the problems here that they're struggling with, I just like sometimes I feel like shouting that this is what other people have already solved this problem before. And, it's tough. It feels tough, but I do encourage people to go to functional conferences that they're talking about asset management, asset procurement, maintenance, not property management, but just asset maintenance, and learn what's happening in other industries, because it is, the solutions are out there, and the vendors are just like we are. The vendors are very willing to cooperate and listen and learn. And, it's sometimes it's very portable over. It's very portable into the industry. And
Well,
that's where it came from.
there's been some key leaders that have come into the space over the last few years. And someone that comes to mind for me who I'm super impressed with is Andrew Boone at Tricon Residential. His background was in Dunkin' Donuts, and he was managing. You would think that here's the coolest thing he ever shared with me so far. I mean, he's shared cool things, but this was the coolest. I was like, wow, so like coffee beans. He goes, our number one thing was actually bacon. So you're talking about Dunkin' Donuts, but here's the part. He took a lens on supply chain and is applying it in SFR BTR, and is making massive impact by not looking at it so granularly, but applying things that he says the exact same thing. We already know. It already occurred. Because again, I think I put him in one of those categories of being like, wow, that guy's sharp. He's smart. Look at him coming in and looking at our business differently, right? And he's very humble and is saying, well, it's not really me. This has already been solved in other areas of the world, in another supply chain, procurement areas. And so what you're saying is like, hey, step outside of our industry and maybe start looking at some functional conferences and higher level visibility around asset management, and think outside the box, or apply what they're saying on one topic to this, and voila, you might come over here and really could be a hero as IrisCX is, by applying some things that we already know. So, know before you go is your motto. And I think we're talking about triage on a maintenance occupied scenario. What's one of the most or unexpected ways customers are using? Is there anything unexpected? Because here, when you were when you were talking, I was like, there's a lot of benefits. I was actually at NARPM this week, and there was an owner of a vendor, and he was having some challenges with an employee, and like, how do I coach this person? Do I terminate this person? And there's a lot of pros and cons when you're talking about the people side of the business. And I said, there's two. Yes, you could let this person go. You could keep this person, get them coaching. There's going to be benefits to both, right? And so, we were having a tricky conversation. There are actually benefits sometimes of terminating somebody, because you might find someone else in your organization that stands up and says, I can do that. So instead of being fear-based and saying, well, I don't want to let this person go because I don't know how we're going to operate with this person, you may end up discovering things you never would have discovered. So those are some of the pros of termination. Here's some of the cons of termination. Here's some of the pros of keeping. And we're working through that. And I think you can apply the same concept to hiring or firing or coaching or developing or letting someone go to this. Because
I think the question.
what don't you know that you don't know by implementing a triage software? So what have you learned?
Well, you brought up a really good example around just development, right? Call it getting better, or identifying opportunities early. So one of the things that we built the system for, so the data is captured, the toilet, whatever the fridge part's been recognized, and that creates a system, and all that's because it's recorded, right? And it's
Mhm.
recorded all cloudish, so there's no data that sits in the phone. It's all very secure. We've been through a million of those. And we built that with intention to create workflows, like automate workflow, right? So if I go and triage your fridge, we're going to create that workflow, that work order for you automatically based on voice and vision and photos. We'll create that work order to push through. And that's why we recorded everything. Well, what we found people doing is that they actually use the recordings to do quality assurance. They do these recordings to train people. So now instead of actually creating training documentation, all they do, someone does a good job on triaging a toilet, they'll mark that as triage, and now they're training. Now that training library is being built. So they're building training libraries in real time with real life examples. And then someone comes on board, they just go to the training playlist and look at the training article, the training issues. Because people often say like training is a hard thing to do. Well, because training is hard to curate. It's out of date the second you print it and develop it. So why not have the system create the training?
Yeah, training is truly experience.
That's right.
So if they
So we record the experience. And the one thing that people have shared with us is that, especially people that are new to the system, is that because you can see, they can learn so fast versus having to learn how to triage something over the phone where you've kind of got to guess a lot. You've got to interrogate the resident a lot and to understand what, GFCI as an example, right? Like if you can see the GFCI, in 13 milliseconds, if you should advise them to reset it or you should advise them to back up and unplug all the stuff that's plugged in. Right. If you don't see that, you have to ask the questions and maybe you forget. And maybe they reset that GFCI and it sparks again because they got the hair straightener and the curling iron plugged in, right? And it's just going to blow up. So seeing the problem helps you learn instantly. Because that's one thing that we learned, and this was shared with us by one of our customers. We didn't design it this way. Is that they're like, because our people can see the problem, they're able to solve much wider problem sets. They're able to do it in a much more empathetic conversation because I'm coaching you. I'm not daring you, or I'm not questioning your ability or your sanity. I'm coaching you on a problem. Hey, there's the reset and there's a reset in your garbage disposal. All right, reset that. Let's run some water in there. Let's press the button. Let's see you're good to go. Right? Things like that are so easy to be able to solve when you can see the problem. So I hope someone listening to this podcast is going to think about the human, their human systems, like their eyes, their ears, their nose, their mouth, all that stuff. And how do those systems interact with their data and their real life? And then how can you bring that over? Like what makes it easier for the resident? What makes it easier for my experts, my technicians? Because if you can just use, we're talking about infection. Yeah.
Let's not assume our audience knows what we're talking about here.
Right.
You said it might be it's easier if someone can see something, they can troubleshoot it better. So you just said easier to see it. Well, if AI, if I'm calling in with a problem, and again, we'll go back to this heat switch, my heat won't turn on.
Yeah.
How are they going to see it, Guillermo? What do you mean?
Well, we're at a point now where you can capture this data. So there's kind of two steps to it. Step one is if it's asynchronous, so the person is not live, we can capture that data. We can figure out what the problem is and make a recommendation to the expert. If it's a live conversation, then the expert can see and they can make recommendations to the resident. We're not at a stage. There's two things that we're missing to be able to make for AI to make recommendations. AI is not great at recognizing objects in real time, like in real time video. It can do it through a picture pretty good.
And if we're all using ChatGPT, we've all uploaded the photo and then it just kind of comes back a little bit weird.
That part, we're more ahead on that part than the second part. The second part is the real problem we need to figure out. We're not yet comfortable with the liability of the recommendation. Because if AI gives you a recommendation to reset the GFCI and it catches fire and someone gets hurt, you, the owner, are liable for that. You're liable for that recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not ready for that part yet. So the technology is going to be ahead of the legal system. And so what's acceptable now is to have a live person give advice to a resident in real time, or if they have confidence of what they're diagnosing. We have had situations, flip the breaker switch as an example, right? This is a house with a basement, right? Go flip the breaker switch is flipped, and the resident walked into the basement. There's an inch of water in the basement, and the expert said, "Stop, don't go near that panel. You've got water in the basement. We're going to send somebody out there." If they had been going on the phone, they would have coached that resident to walk right in and put their hands on a 100 amp panel, right? It's things like that when you see, you're able to provide the right observation, the right advice.
But how are they seeing?
They see, well, this is what we haven't talked about this yet, right? So how this works is it's a no app experience. We want to build something simple.
Well, I'm the resident. I'll have to download another app because I forgot my app store password. I got to go right. All that. No app.
And so they get a text message. And from that text message, we're able to look through the camera, or your experts able to look through the camera of the resident's phone and see what's going on. In addition, there's tools that are built in, like checklists. So you can follow the checklist in terms of how you want to solve a problem. Checklists for inspections, if you want to do remote inspections. There's drawing and markup tools, so you can draw on there to help coach the conversation. You can turn the flashlight on, take pictures, all those things. So yeah, we probably should have brought this up earlier, because that's the big difference.
Yeah, text.
What's up?
Want to do a demo?
Yeah, we do a live demo right now, sure.
You're my maintenance coordinator. I'm on the line with my maintenance coordinator. Coordinator's sitting at a desk, and they're going to send me a text. Yeah. Okay?
What's up?
Awesome. Okay.
So you got a text message.
Yep. All right. I got the text. Now, and you got a fancy background, so the customer could have that branded.
Well, that's nice in that the tech doesn't, if they're in their truck, if they're in their home, they don't feel it's an invasion of their privacy, right? And then that background is standard across everybody.
Nice.
So you got that text message?
Yep. I'm going to click join. I'm going to hit allow. It says Iris Homes is standing by. This is a live video experience. Allow. No apps. 3 clicks. Join.
There we go.
Wow.
We're going to see on your finger. Turn on the camera. Take a picture. You can draw on that picture. Right. If I want to do that, show that to you. All that we can do all in real time. It takes seconds, right? And then if I want to follow that's cool. If I want to follow a guide here, we're talking about your toilet. Here I can show you the angle lock, follow the checklist, standardize your experience. Again, in every other asset industry, every single thing has a protocol. We follow those protocols with rigor, and the only way to get better is to have checklists. So I'm going to pause this. I'll end this out right here. Hopefully everyone got a sense of what that looks like. We get in, like anything, you escalate, deflect, resolve, complete. In that session, you're going to get a survey on your end, and that survey will show up. And then instantly what we get is things that are detail related. We can go look at a one that we did earlier. Things like this, fridge model number. Oh, here we are, gallery. I can go pick up the model of the fridge remotely, all from just taking pictures. And so
the maintenance tech can show up. When he shows up, he can have the right part. Potentially, you can narrow it down. So many benefits here. Just knowing, I want to show the audience, like you kept saying, see. And this is the one thing. Remember at the beginning of the episode, I said, I haven't seen anything like this. And as a pass flooring vendor, I was like, wow, as a vendor, after I've gotten the non-triage call, even I would like to even do this to then triage, because maybe even as a vendor, there's an application here to use something like that.
We've got customers in the product support space, and like in the inspection space, like it's remarkable when you think about all the trips that people are taking that are low value, or the second trip, like just the fact that even if it's a part is required, right? If you can figure out that part number in like 90 seconds, you've just saved so much downstream disruption. The average age of a work order is usually around 5 days in this business. A work order requires parts is like 17, 18 days.
Wow.
So if you can get that part, so imagine you've taken 5 days just to figure out
Time
part.
ticket, time to arrive. These are all the KPIs that we're measured by as a vendor. All right, shut down that screen, because if they want to see any more, they're going to have to book an appointment with you.
That's right.
Is what they're going to have to do. Let's not show them everything.
So you think about those things, like just think about all the wasted time. And where I get really compassionate about is that these folks that are stuck on these trucks on the I-5, right? Who are like, I had talking to a tech who was like, he had to take mental time off because he was like, the stress of traffic and having to go from A to B was absolutely.
It's not funny. I'm laughing. It's not funny.
No, it's not funny. And then the other side of it all, let's just think of the other side of the talent problem, where you've got seasoned techs that aren't into lifting and ladders anymore. Right. Well, what are we doing with their knowledge? We're just disposing of it? They're not useful any longer? That's not the case. We're sitting here talking about a talent shortage, and we're wasting the techs that we have available today. And we're throwing out the most experienced techs because they don't go on ladders lift anymore. Well, no other industry would ever do that. It's all backwards, right?
Wow.
And so if we take the techs that are seasoned, that aren't ladders and lifting anymore, put them behind an iris screen, they can triage and test, they can figure out all the problems. And then we push that knowledge downstream to all the techs that are in the field that can do that work and make them the most efficient technicians possible. Right now,
well, they're creating your training database on the front end, like you said, by tagging your particular scenario as training.
That's right. And when you tag it as training, don't need to show it any longer. Now you've got all of your training videos. This is what a good inspection looks like, and people need to see it. Because if you describe a good inspection,
this is what a faulty fuse looks like. I mean. It helps. It helps so.
And then we get into the inspections, and
we're getting to hell. Yes, is what we're getting to.
Do that.
Inside the vendor network is what we're doing.
Well, so the people we'd like to talk to, if you have a problem with your work orders are slow, if you have a problem that you've got poor quality in your work orders, if you've got a problem with your inspections or your grinding, you probably feel pretty helpless. Because you can't hire any more people, and they're not available if you could hire them. So, but you have an expectation for something that's getting more expensive. So, like, let's think about doing it differently, and let's steal from other industries, and steal with vigor, right? Because that is where the ideas are going to come from. There's no need to reinvent anything.
Yeah. So this is triage. This is a triage software. Know before you go, and 42% is the magic number that we think we can wipe off the map. And 42% of all inbound tickets. I say put it to the challenge. If that number is 10%, it moves the needle. If that number is 5%. For some of the larger operators, it moves the needle. If we now basic it down to the bullet points, job joy, resident. Oh, let's start with the most important, right? Because none of us are going to have jobs if the resident experience isn't managed. Job joy of our people. Mm-hmm. I would definitely put that right there next to resident experience. People who want to work here, know they work here. They know that their talents aren't being wasted, but are actually accelerated. And so, let's talk about this one thing, though, that everyone keeps talking about. This is how we're using AI, not to eliminate people, but to actually allow people to be the best asset and use their most valuable knowledge instead of having them do redundant stuff that is actually the stuff that stresses them out because they're not living in their happy place, because they're like, I'm wasted talent. I'm spending more time driving around town than actually doing what I'm really good at, and that's actually fixing stuff.
And they figure that how am I going to get ahead? How am I going to get ahead?
I'm in this job every day doing the same thing. No one's listening. We're doing the same things every day, and we're expecting a different result. The result here is, the thing is this will not allow them to skip triage, because what we established at the beginning was triage is getting skipped most of the time.
Yep.
Now what this does is it corrects and says, no, we're going to triage.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first correct. The second is, okay, now if we're triaging, we're probably going to eliminate close to 40. We'll throw it out there.
Sure.
40, cut the number in half. If you're doubting that on this call, the numbers still impact the bottom line. 40%. And then of the 40%, we're going to do it smarter, faster, stronger, wiser. Resident experience is going to be impacted. Turnover with your employee base. They're not going to feel burnout and wasted. I mean, this is checking every single box.
Terrible idea.
It's a horrible idea. Well, and then we figured out it's not a new idea. Kind of like my showers. We've been doing it for a decade. We just haven't been doing it in this space. This product, we've done 80 million square feet of this product. So I'm going to trade shows and establishing this isn't new. This is already being done. Same thing here. This isn't new. This is already being done. We just haven't been doing it in this space.
Yeah, precisely. So I think that's the exciting opportunity here, is that given the early innings in the industry, given the similarities with other industries, like it's very, very similar. And given the challenge on costs, rent, talent, we're if you're frustrated with those options, then you should really consider something else. And
this isn't a new tech stack either. This isn't a new tech stack. This isn't a new software we're asking you to buy. This is an additional tool that needs to be in the toolbox of every maintenance supervisor out there. It's just another it's an update on your iPhone that comes out every 6 months. It's like, hey, you already have FaceTime. You already have texted a phone call. Why not put a tool on this bad boy that allows us to see?
Yeah. Precisely.
That's all. It's just another tool in the toolbox. Not a tech stack. It's just a tool.
Like, we're not
your existing maintenance team that's already doing this. Just give them another tool. Just give them another tool.
Yeah. If you could just know before you go, you just change everything. We have an entire system based on not knowing.
Well, and now couldn't the purchasing department extract some of this data?
Immediately.
And now you're going to buy the tool shop on wheels better.
And asset management, right? Now you can inventory all of your assets. You know the appliances that were bought, the serial model number, all those things. And you know that all remotely. I mean, actually, we just came out recently. I was just looking at legislation in Colorado where they're actually, like, the Colorado law endorses telemaintenance. They're saying, hey, if you want to do move-out inspections, here's the new law. You can do it in person or telemaintenance. Those are two choices.
Wow.
Right. So, like, legislators are stealing from other industries and saying, you got two choices to do move-out inspections now in Colorado: in person or telemaintenance, but it has to be digital.
I'm glad you brought that up, because there was I think they were in Cincinnati, a property manager I was speaking to at NARPM, and at every single turn in their state or in their county, I don't even know if it was state, but in this county, no, it was statewide, there has to be an inspection done by the city on every single turn. And I was like, whoa, that's got to be adding days to turn times. And I was like, dang, and then it expires. So let's say that he was saying it expires, and then you go to lease it up and it doesn't lease in time, and that thing and they don't lease by that time. Now they got to go get another inspection.
Really?
Yes. So let's circle back. I'll tell you what state that is, because it sounds like they could use this pretty quick, or at least start lobbying. That was actually my answer. I was like, sounds like you need a lobbyist in that area to address some of this. but this could solve, I don't always think legislation sits around. It's like, well, what can we do today to really mess things up for this industry? I think what you're doing is there's something happened, right? There's some experience and it was negative for a constituent of some sort or a group of constituents. And so they're advocating to help the resident once again. So here's something, I mean, there could be a state here where this could be a solution in that state. So I'm glad we were able to bring this to the Inside the Vendor Network audience today. As we close down, I want to ask you one more thing. So you are a board member of the U.S. PropTech Council.
Yeah.
What industry shifts are you most excited about that you're seeing there, and or maybe even share what is the U.S. PropTech Council and what is their mission, and what are you seeing? That sounds like they're talking about some pretty high level stuff. What are you seeing out of that?
So, I mean, certainly the mission of the PropTech Council is to bring together technology companies and operators, right? And all the different verticals in PropTech, right? Commercial, retail, all the stuff, residential, construction. And so that's the mission of it. And in fact, it's broader than just US. We've got folks, chapter in Canada, chapter in the UK, and that's all coming together. It's being led by Amy Povato. She's just kicking ass. One of the things that's really special about what we're seeing all the time is that we're all seeing automation is the thing. I know we talk a lot about AI, but automation is enabled by AI. We have automations, right? It's all enabled by AI. And so AI has unlocked automation. And when you consider this industry still has a very big paper footprint, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we really want to get rid of that paper footprint. So as we move to digital and we can start digitizing inspections, digitizing maintenance, digitizing plans, and all this stuff can move into automation. If we don't have the first piece of it in the system, it's going to be difficult to automate. So one of the things that we kind of thought about was that, back to Iris is like, well, why aren't things in the system, right? Well, it's because it's really hard to put things in the system. It's hard to kind of get data in. And so if we can get the data right, then we can automate and consistent data. And so people aren't great at consistency, but AI is. So let's just let the AI do the data part, and then we can use AI to automate. But ultimately, if you don't have the good data at the very beginning, you're going to really fall victim in the automation piece. It's going to stall out. And so that's the part of like in every vertical, it's all about automation. It's every single conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I implemented certain workflows. I worked with, one of my key guys to, put together some automation using Zapier, right? Like if it and that, then go into this software and do this. It's a lot easier said than done because garbage in, garbage out, right? And sequence is important as well when you're putting in automation. So that's where SOPs and process workflow is really important. Sequence.
Right. And so like often I find that there's not enough SOPs out there right now to even consider automation. We talked about this a couple weeks back, is that I would recommend if you're thinking about this new frontier where we're going, simplify and standardize your existing operations. And you can do that with a piece of paper, right? Here's a checklist, write it out, print it out. Everyone just follow a checklist, the same checklist. And then recognize that not all checklists are perfect. So spend some time with your team members and ask about how good the checklist is a week later, 2 weeks later, after you've done 10 or 15 different inspections. And at that point, then you can start thinking about automating it. But like you can't automate stuff that hasn't been tested by humans yet because they're going to reject it. So then automate it, then you harden it, put it through an automation engine, and then it's going to deliver the outcome you expect. And so, to further what you asked earlier, all this automation is solving the principal problem, two problems we have right now is that revenue is down and expenses are up. We're all having probably flatline revenue this year, negative net revenue when you consider inflation.
Hopefully flatlined revenue.
Right, yeah. And expenses are going up. Like you read about, like if you have a resident that you lose this year, you're probably signing in a resident at a lower lease rate than what you had that resident. So for gosh sakes, do not lose that resident this year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have
growth rents about flatline, right? Some markets are showing a little bit, but it's not happening.
So they're all feeling the same thing. And so because of all that, how could I do it faster, cheaper, better? That is the priority of every single buyer out there right now. And yeah, that's the curious
game of any business is, from an operations standpoint, let's control our costs. And costs are not just the price we're paying for stuff. We've talked about it throughout this show. The cost of our employees, the cost of the resident experience. Ask your teams that too. What do they understand the cost of those things? And I know when working with my team as we were developing SOPs, and you can get very overwhelmed in writing these SOPs or these checklists sometimes, because you start to realize the intricacies of your business. And so what you're saying is like, hey, don't worry about the 20% anomalies. What's 80% of the time, or what's a majority, right? Like focus there, carve out the real special cases and build the SOPs around 80% of the time, 60% of the time. Start identifying those things that you can categorize into the big buckets, apply it to those things, then start to work and focus on the other areas. Like, you can't put automation into place without SOPs, workflows, and having some basics in place. And don't get overwhelmed by that by making it perfect.
Well, I think what's really interesting is that you think about the SOPs in the context of your technology. Sometimes your SOP changes.
Right.
Here's an example, and I don't know if we're over time here, but here's an example. Like our SOP, because of the way our software works, a conventional SOP for an inspection would be bedroom 1, bedroom 2, this checklist, bathroom 1, bathroom 2, this checklist, upstairs, downstairs, whatever, right? An SOP on Iris, it mimics more the walk, because we can figure out what bedroom you're in.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need to create 10 different or 4 different bedroom parts of the checklist. You just have one that says right-hand walk, and just say your observations out loud. And that's much easier. So we took the checklist, literally the checklist was 500 checks on the checklist. We brought it down to 25. Right? And have the same quality of check of inspection. So because of the way the technology works. But they started with 500, right? And that was a very hardened process. We brought that down to 25 checks, and it's working better, faster, cheaper.
We worked with iViewIt when we preferred to test out them doing final walks, because we had to final walk after our jobs were done. This was in a unoccupied scenario, not an occupied scenario, because we needed completion photos, and our completion photos weren't always great, or we weren't even getting them from our subcontractors.
Right.
And then maybe we would get a completion photo of the part that was done and looked really good, and then they just wouldn't give us a photo of the, the pile of trash they left in the driveway.
Yeah.
And so now we're getting a call back that, there was something in the driveway. We, working through with my team, developing the long list, it started out much, much longer, but it went basic, get out of the car, take picture of the front of the house, take a picture of the left of the house, right of the house. Then it was like, oh, okay, now they were like, open the garbage can, take a picture in it, make sure our guys didn't put stuff in the garbage can. Right. So walking through that, also, rip the Band-Aid off a little bit and go ahead and walk through these steps and start identifying what you're going to do as you develop these steps and these SOPs. You're going to realize where you have some own inefficiencies in your SOP.
Without a doubt.
So implementing your product, because as my leaders were looking at it with the team that put some of that together, they were like, wait a minute, we're doing that?
Yeah.
You might find out you're doing things that you don't even need. Be like, oh, we used to do that for a customer because that's what they wanted, but we don't do that anymore because our customer's SOP changed. So when was the last time did those things get looked at? And now your guys every day are putting importance on taking time to do stuff they shouldn't even be doing.
Exactly, because they're going to follow the list, right? And so
it's
just follow all this stuff. It's just we're at a point now that
love it.
Technology doesn't allow you to do it. So here's an example. It'll be an example. Like we have one customer right now that rather than create the checklist, we look at their old checklist and they look at their own checklist. They kind of like we're like, oh my God, we're asked people to do this. And we said, okay, let's kind of walk away from that. Just turn on Iris, and because we do unoccupied too, and walk the unit as you normally would. And then we'll build a checklist from that. So it's like,
And they were just verbalizing.
it's like recording a macro.
That's amazing.
They just walk the unit themselves, and then everything.
Yeah, one most experienced, one of the guys that checks everything. He's really good at. One of the guys that you said we're trying to retire his jersey. No, get that guy, extract all the amazing stuff that guy or that woman knows. They're your most valuable assets. Just have them do it. You did it side by side with them. It sounds they verbalized everything, and then you guys kind of wrote it up.
He just walked. We weren't even there. He just walked it himself.
Oh,
and here's the crazy part. He walked it in Spanish.
Wow.
He created an English checklist.
Wow. And then you could even convert it back to Spanish.
Well, yeah, we built two, right? But we built an English and a Spanish checklist based on his Spanish walk of the unit. So just like, think.
We could go on for another hour.
Yeah, like this, it's very, very, we're getting in the weeds here, but that's what's possible.
Yeah, but I love it. I love the weeds. I love this product. These are real life. That's what inside the vendor network is. It's not like, hey, let's say 50,000 foot view. No, let's get inside. And so I think we got inside the vendor network. We got a hell yes today.
Oh, you're such a
good. So what's the one final thing you want to tell the audience today? How do they get in contact with you? How do they book an appointment with you? If someone says, hell yeah, I want to know more. Give me the deets. So give me them digits.
If you're frustrated if you've got a to-do list that says, I need to speed up work orders and I need to speed up inspections. If that's on your to-do list and you're frustrated with your choices, right? Give me a call. Shoot me on LinkedIn, Guillermo Salazar at IrisCX. Look that up on Google. You'll find me. Very easy to do. Or you can email me, gsalazar@iriscx.com. Get me there. Either way.
Well, contacts in the YouTube.
Very easy to find. And then at the same time, happy to, if that's your problem, I'd love to hear about how you're trying to deal with it, what you've done before, why it's not working for you, and why you'd like to consider change. And we'll chat about it. And I'll show you how Iris can change your life. You can get started for as little as $100. And get going. And so there's no excuse anymore, right?
There's no excuse. You took them all away.
Yeah. And so we're happy to work with anybody in this space. Everybody I've spoken to has been such an incredible innovator, and we're all here together. Like, we really are here to help. If you don't have a problem, keep doing what you're doing, because most people have problems.
Oh, I do. So also, keep this conversation going inside the vendor network, over in our LinkedIn private group. Ask questions, call BS, whatever you want to do. We're going to keep it fun over there. Let's keep the conversations going, because that's what this is all about. Thank you, Guillermo Salazar, with IrisCX, joining inside the vendor network. I'm your host, Yvonne Kenny. And until next time, because we're going to have this fella back, stay safe out there. Close down 42 less tickets by triaging, and we'll see you next Wednesday on Inside the Vendor Network. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome.